With ancient artifacts, famous paintings, and discounted diamonds, today we're checking out the craziest things that people have found at thrift stores. From an original Pollock to this million-dollar bowl. In 2013, an anonymous shopper from Sydney, Australia bought this weird-looking cup for $4, and after taking it home, he started to wonder whether it was valuable. So, he sent a picture to Sotheby's, who told him it was a 17th century Chinese libation cup carved from a rhinoceros horn. Chinese scholars would drink from these cups communally at important ceremonies. And in traditional Chinese medicine, rhino horn is believed to have magical properties. So the rare cups are still coveted by collectors in Asia. And while it isn't clear how this one ended up in Australia, it ended up selling for about $60,000 at auction.
We're rich! We're rich! We're rich!
Similarly, in 2007, this family purchased an ordinary-looking bowl at a yard sale in New York, which could be mistaken for a small ashtray. After paying all of $3, they kept it in their living room for years, before becoming curious about its origins and taking it to Sotheby's to be appraised. Here, an expert identified it as a 1,000-year-old ding bowl, originating from the Northern Song Dynasty in China. Ding bowls are lightweight porcelain bowls with simple, delicately carved patterns, and finding one so old and well-preserved is extremely rare. In fact, this yard sale discovery was immediately valued at $200,000 to $300,000. And when it went to auction, a lucky bidder paid over $2 million for this particular piece. I bet the thrifty family was bowled over by that windfall. In 2010, Randy Guijarro visited his favorite antique store in Fresno, California, and found a box of tintypes, an old style of photograph that was invented in the 1850s. He found some he liked and paid $2 for them before heading home and studying the photos. One of them showed a group of men playing croquet, and as Randy looked closer, he spotted a familiar face. Randy recognized Billy the Kid, one of the most notorious gunfighters and outlaws of the American West. He called his wife over, and they discovered that the other people in the photo were members of Billy's notorious gang, the Regulators. After that, they spent another year authenticating the photo and ultimately identified all 18 people in the picture and the building they posed in front of in Chavez County, New Mexico. When Randy took his find public, scholars discovered that the photo was taken in 1878 after a wedding took place, and a similar picture sold at auction for $2.3 million in 2011. So Randy insured his photo for $5 million, and although he hasn't sold it yet, he said he wants to use the money to pay off debts, buy a new car, and search for more treasure in antique stores around California. Man, from wanted posters to million-dollar photographs, Billy's head still fetches a high price. We'll look at some even older historical artifacts in a moment, but first, let's move on to a piece of modern art. Now, love it or hate it, modern art has a way of turning squiggles and splatters into millions of dollars. And that's exactly what happened to Terry Horton in 1992. Terry was searching a thrift store in Costa Mesa, California, for a funny gift to cheer up a friend, and decided that what she saw as a large, ugly painting would do the trick. She negotiated the price down to $5, and her friend did get a laugh out of the picture, but unfortunately, it wouldn't fit in her house. So she gave it back to Horton, who stuck it in the shed and later tried to unload it in her own yard sale. There, an art teacher noted it looked like a Jackson Pollock, and Horton responded with, "Who the is Jackson Pollock?" Ultimately, she did some research and realized Pollock was a frickin' famous painter whose pictures are worth a frickin' ton of money. So she tried to get the painting authenticated, even hiring a forensic specialist who matched a fingerprint on the back of the piece to one on another Pollock painting. Although the art world still refused to accept her find, Horton was offered $9 million for it, which she turned down because she believed it was worth $50 million.
Chump change.
Excuse me, $50 million. Unfortunately, Terry never found a buyer willing to meet her asking price, and she passed away in 2019 without successfully selling the painting. Yep, she left behind artwork that could have made her wildly rich and let $9 million slip right through her hands.
Greed.
Greed is bad for business.
Later on, we'll look at another thrift store masterpiece that ended up in the background of a movie. But first, let's check out somebody who went to Goodwill and stumbled across a genuine piece of ancient Roman history. In 2018, an antiques dealer called Laura Young found a Roman bust for $34.99 at a Goodwill in Austin, Texas. Now, at first glance, it looked like one of those tacky porcelain imitations that you get at flea markets. But this bust weighed 52 pounds and appeared to be made of solid marble. So Laura bought it and nicknamed it Dennis, after a character in her favorite TV show.
My nose was chiseled by the gods themselves, Frank.
Then she took Dennis straight to Sotheby's, who authenticated him as an artifact from ancient Rome's Julio-Claudian era and dated it from 27 BCE to 68 CE. The bust likely depicts Nero Claudius Drusus Germanicus, a general and politician who led military campaigns in Germany. Even more astonishing, the sculpture later belonged to King Ludwig I of Bavaria in the 1800s, who displayed it in the Pompeianum, a replica Roman villa built in Germany in the 1840s. It then vanished after World War II, stolen by an American soldier who brought it to the U.S. after the war. It isn't clear what happened next, but we do know that 70 years after the war ended, the bust was donated to Goodwill, waiting to be rediscovered by Laura. Her find was unbelievable, but there was a catch. Dennis was technically classified as a looted artifact, so Laura couldn't keep him or sell him. Whatever happened to finders keepers? She coordinated with legal counsel and museum representatives to decide the artifact's fate, and it stayed in her living room for 3 years as arrangements were made. But eventually it was returned to the Pompeianum in 2023. That's a bummer for Laura, but thankfully she was able to acquire a half-sized 3D printed replica of Dennis to preserve her very own slice of history at home. Stuart Little is a heartbreaking movie about a couple who adopted a mouse from an orphanage instead of an actual human child. But the movie also contains one of the craziest thrift store finds ever. In 1999, the movie's set designer snagged a painting from an antique store in Pasadena for next to nothing and used it to decorate the Littles' house. Flash forward to 2009, and the Hungarian art historian Gergely Barkay was watching the movie with his daughter when he noticed something incredible. The painting in the background was a lost masterpiece by the Hungarian artist Robert Barany that had gone missing after an exhibition in 1928. The mysterious artwork was called Sleeping Lady with Black Vase, and Barkay was stunned that it had reappeared in the background of a kids' movie 70 years later. He got in contact with the set designer who had kept the painting and hung it in her house since the movie wrapped filming. As news of the discovery spread, Barkay discovered that the painting had been passed between collectors since it was lost in the 20s, before an antique store bought it in the late 1990s. As the painting's value was revealed, the set designer sold it to a private collector, who then brought it to Budapest to sell at auction in 2014. Here, Barany's missing masterpiece was promptly napped up for $285,700, proving that when watching a movie, sometimes it pays to pay attention. Say hello to our brand new Scratch a Fact calendar. It isn't your average calendar. This one's packed with hundreds of fun facts. Each day, scratch off to reveal a brand new amazing fact that'll blow your mind. From wild history tidbits to quick trivia, you'll have something new to look forward to every single day. But wait, there's more. Each page is bursting with stunning hand-drawn illustrations of Bartholomew's adventures over the seasons. It's an immersive work of art. It's the perfect gift for your friends and family that everyone can enjoy each and every day. So why settle for a boring 2026 calendar when you can have the Be Amazed Scratch a Fact calendar? Back in the 80s, people's fashion choices were pretty out there. Just ask Deborah Goddard, a woman who visited a flea market in England and spent $11 on a box of cheap costume jewelry that was fitted with giant fake gemstones. She mainly bought it for a set of bangles that she liked, but it also contained a chunky cocktail ring that she occasionally wore over the next 30 years. Then one day in 2017, she was cleaning her house when the ring slipped off her finger and fell into the light, causing it to glimmer like a real giant diamond. Intrigued and hopeful, she took it to a local jeweler's, who took one look at the ring and almost fainted. He confirmed the diamond was real, but it was so large he couldn't accurately value it, and she'd have to go to Sotheby's for an appraisal. They successfully identified the gem as a 26-carat cushion-shaped diamond from the 19th century that was worth at least $382,000. Her costume piece was the real deal, and it went to auction at Sotheby's in London. It sold for a whopping $717,000.
Nice.
Nobody knows how the so-called tenor diamond ended up at the flea market, but so far, Deborah has spent her newfound wealth on a vacation in Barbados, a Celine Dion concert in Vegas, and a fur coat. She also set up a vintage jewelry firm that hunts flea markets for more forgotten luxury items, clearly hoping that lightning will strike twice. We'll look at more jewelry in a moment, but first, let's move on to the world of gaming. Paying attention to the news about valuable antiques can really pay off, and it did for Jennifer Thompson of Charlotte, North Carolina. In 2013, she was browsing her local Goodwill and noticed a game behind the counter for $7.99. It was an NES cartridge called Stadium Events, and she recognized the name from a news story she'd seen about a rare game that sold for thousands of dollars. See, the game was released in 1987 by the Japanese company Bandai, but they recalled it after Nintendo bought the North American rights and renamed it to World Class Track Meet. As a result, only 200 copies with the Stadium Events label were sold in America, and collectors are willing to buy them for incredibly high prices. In 2010, a factory-sealed Stadium Events cartridge was bought for over $40,000 at auction, with over 100 bids all vying for the chance to literally win the game. Thompson rushed across the street to use the Wi-Fi at McDonald's and quickly confirmed her hunch. Then she hurried to the Goodwill store and bought the game, later selling it on GameGavel.com for $25,000. Now that's what I call a level up. I've heard about people rubbing shoulders with the stars, but in 2023, a Redditor took the saying literally after finding a designer jacket that used to belong to an A-lister. The user, Pink Shorts Think Force, visited a thrift store in New York's West Village and discovered a suit jacket made by the designer tailor Richard James. Now, these jackets go for thousands of dollars, so it was already a pretty special find. But when he opened the jacket, he was astonished to discover a name tag that clearly read Elton John, and a slip of paper in the pockets with Elton's specific measurements.
Coincidence? I think not!
Elton John isn't exactly a common name, and the Rocket Man is a personal friend of Richard James, frequently wearing his suits at events and concerts. Still not convinced? Well, the Redditor found the jacket at a Housing Works store, an AIDS charity that's partnered with the Elton John AIDS Foundation. Elton's foundation had granted Housing Works thousands of dollars in the past, so it looked like the jacket was probably the real deal. And clothes worn by Elton John have sold for over $2,000 to collectors in the past. Still, as a fan of his music, I'd be tempted to keep the find, so I could strut around in a jacket worn by the Rocket Man himself. If you're a gamer, then prepare to be jealous, because in March 2025, a lucky Redditor hit the jackpot at their local Goodwill. They spotted a PS5 carelessly perched on a pile of DVD players with a price tag of just $9.
It should have been me, not him! It's not fair!
This console can go for hundreds of dollars secondhand, and when the Redditor posted their find, commenters guessed that it was priced by an older member of the staff who assumed the console was an old, clunky DVD player. Regardless, apart from a small crack near the disk drive, the PlayStation worked perfectly, and the Redditor took it home that day to the bitter envy of the Reddit comments section. Since 1979, the Antiques Roadshow has been telling people that their heirlooms and thrift store finds are priceless or totally worthless.
Yeah, that's all. My goodness. After all those years.
But one of the show's craziest discoveries came in 2025. A woman in Ayrshire, Scotland came in with a vase that she bought for $1 at a car boot sale, a British flea market where people sell items out of their trunks. She used the vase as a plant pot, and when the plant died, she left it in her attic and was ready to throw it away. But when the Antiques Roadshow rolled into town, well, she thought she'd bring in the vase to learn about its origins. The experts were shocked, and they explained that this delicate 1929 piece was an original René Lalique, crafted with a rare process called lost wax. Now I know what you're thinking. René La who? Lost what now? Well, Lalique was a French jeweler and glass designer known globally for his painstakingly intricate designs. And his lost wax process involved a wax model being encased in plaster, melted away, and then replaced with molten glass. The result? A masterpiece that's highly prized by collectors. The appraiser said he'd been waiting for 25 years to see a piece like this, and it eventually sold for $40,000. I'll be right back. I've got loads of old plant pots and I wanna be rich. Finds that are worth a lot of money are great, but sometimes finding cold hard cash is even better. In 2014, this shopper purchased an old purse at a thrift store and was thrilled to see that it came with a bonus item, $259 in cash. Then when she posted her find online, commenters noted that those $2 Canadian bills were actually discontinued in 1996, and ones with rarer serial numbers can be sold to collectors for $40 to $1,000 each. This could make her loot much more valuable, but she isn't the only one who's been lucky enough to find a thrift store bundle of bills. In January 2025, a TikToker called Colleen Weil stumbled upon a men's camel hair blazer in a local store that felt suspiciously heavy.
What is that?
She felt inside the left breast pocket and found a wad of cash totaling around $300. Then, when she tried the blazer on, the right breast pocket revealed another secret stash of bills, bringing the total to a jaw-dropping $617. The blazer alone was worth $145, bringing the overall value of her thrift store purchase to $762. Man, that's some seriously smart cash she will wear. We'll check out more money heists later, but first, let's look at someone who went through a thrift store and walked away with Elvis and Andy Warhol. In 2012, a retired chef called John Richard was poking around an Oxfam charity store in London, England, when he found a unique bag. It was brown and covered with images of Elvis in the style of Andy Warhol's pop art. Now, Richard thought the £20 price tag, equal to $27, was a bit steep, so he tried to haggle with the clerk to knock $7 off the price. But she wouldn't budge, and ultimately he bought it anyway. It was the best decision he could have made. After a couple of months, he realized it looked a lot like these Warhol-themed designs created by the famous hat and bag maker Philip Treacy. So John decided to take the bag to a Philip Treacy store, and they confirmed it was real, and only 10 of that style were ever made. Philip Treacy's designs are regularly worn by A-list celebrities and the British royal family. And once Richard took his find public, he received offers from buyers in China for $250,000 and £350,000, the equivalent of $500,000. So John quite literally secured the bag. And I guess he's pretty glad he didn't walk away from that sale over a $7 discount. Legend has it, when MGM Studios were making the 1939 classic The Wizard of Oz, they encountered a coincidence that was much better than any plot twist in a Hollywood movie. The costume department bought an entire rack of jackets in a second-hand store for the character Professor Marvel. Then, when the director Victor Fleming and the actor Frank Morgan went through the coats and chose one, they found a label inside marked with the name L. Frank Baum, the author of the original Wizard of Oz novel. Pictures of the jacket were then sent to the original tailor, who confirmed that it was indeed made for Baum. They also contacted his widow, Maud, who immediately identified it as her husband's coat. The story has become a legendary part of Hollywood history. But some people are skeptical that it actually happened, as there's a lack of physical records to back it up or documentation that proves that the jacket was Baum's. Still, Victor Fleming was adamant that the story was true, and I think it seems like the real deal. It's like the author was blessing the movie adaptation from Over the Rainbow. Let's move back to the art world. In 2012, a South Carolina man named Leroy bought a painting from Goodwill, mostly because he liked the frame. Leroy was a former antiques dealer, and he thought the frame was worth $50, which made the price tag of $3 seem more than fair. He also figured the oil painting inside it might earn him another $100 or so if he sold it online. Well, his daughter-in-law thought it could be worth more, so she took it to the Antiques Roadshow, and to her shock, she received an appraisal of $20,000 to $30,000 on what was actually a painting from 1650 that was created at a Flemish art school in Amsterdam. After this insane valuation, Leroy put the 362-year-old painting up for auction, and it ended up earning $190,000 from an international buyer. Meanwhile, in the 90s, a man from Indiana bought a thrift store painting for $30 as he needed something to cover up a hole in his wall. The painting sat there for years until one day the man was playing a board game about famous pieces of art called Masterpiece, and he noticed something familiar. He quickly contacted an art gallery in New York and confirmed that his wall covering was a piece by the American still life painter Martin Johnson Heade. Heade worked throughout the 1800s, and his work is incredibly valuable. So ultimately, the painting sold for a whopping $1.2 million at auction, leaving the thrifty shopper with enough money to fill the hole in his wall and buy an entire new house. Lots of people dream of getting something signed by their favorite celebrity, but instead of seeking them out in person, you should just head to your local thrift. In 2018, a Redditor called Jenna Bunnykins visited a thrift store and spent $1.99 on a copy of The Shining by Stephen King.
Here's Johnny!
But as she flicked it open, she discovered it contained the King of Horror's signature and photograph, with a personal message written to a fan called Jerry. The book is a shining example of a collector's item, and signed copies can go for $1,400 to $6,000 depending on the edition. So somewhere, a dude called Jerry is crying over his lost piece of memorabilia. But another crazy find came in 2013 when one Goodwill shopper found a first edition copy of Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time that was signed with Hawking's signature and thumbprint. Pretty amazing, huh? Well, maybe not. Some commenters noted that Hawking's disabilities prevented him from writing anything from the 1970s onward. So the 1996 date on the signature suggests that the handwriting might have belonged to someone else. Furthermore, while Hawking was known to mark his signed copies with a fingerprint, no one's been able to confirm that this print was authentic, and it'd be pretty easy for anyone to fake. In 2018, a first edition copy of A Brief History of Time with an authentic thumbprint was sold at auction for $92,000. So a fraudster would have lots of incentive to make a counterfeit version. But at the same time, if this copy is the real deal, then the Redditor should be sitting on a small fortune. In 2014, another Redditor found an autographed book that looked a bit more legit. Their uncle spent $2 on a signed copy of Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea at a yard sale. The handwriting is even pretty legible for a guy who liked to say, "write drunk, edit sober." Inside, the message from Hemingway is addressed to Susanna and Carlton Tweed, who lived in Miami whilst Hemingway was alive. Hemingway himself moved into a house in Key West in 1931, and Carlton Tweed used to fish there, so it's possible that they bumped shoulders from time to time. This connection means the signature is almost definitely authentic, and signed copies of Hemingway's books are often listed between $6,000 to $27,000, which is a pretty good return on $2. Moving on to a modern A-lister, Nobody has a hold over the pop industry like Taylor Swift. And for all the Swifties out there, prepare to meet the Holy Grail. In 2024, a Redditor asked a coworker who loved thrifting to keep an eye out for Taylor's first album so they could give it to their fiancée as a gift. The coworker soon came back with a CD that they bought for $1.99, and amazingly, it was signed by the woman herself. This specific version of her debut album contains lyrics that were changed in later recordings. So the piece of music memorabilia is incredibly rare, and copies are regularly sold for over $1,000. But as the Redditor knew how valuable the item was, they let the coworker keep it, which was an incredibly noble thing to do. If it were me, I would have shaked my coworker and fiancé off and taken that bad boy straight to auction. In a moment, we'll check out another piece of memorabilia that's out of this world. But not all thrift store finds are about money. Some are so sentimental that they're virtually priceless. In 2018, a Redditor called Oh Shockwave was thrifting at Goodwill when they found a navy suit jacket on the rack for $8. Inspecting it further, he found a tag that read Brady's, the name of a tailor's located in Pierre, South Dakota. Now, that probably doesn't mean much to you, but it turns out Brady's was the Redditor's great-grandfather's clothing store, which had shut down over 30 years earlier.
You just blew my mind.
Even wilder, the Goodwill he'd found the jacket in was 400 miles away from the store's original location, so it had traveled a long way to be reunited with his family. Obviously, there was no question that he'd buy it, and when he tried the jacket on, it fit him perfectly, like Oh Shockwave's great-granddad had made it just for him. In 2015, Zach Norris from Phoenix, Arizona, was searching for a golf cart at Goodwill, but he was forced to leave empty-handed. Disappointed, he decided to have a dig through the store's watch basket on his way out, and at the very bottom, he spotted a diamond in the rough. He recognized the name Le Coultre, so he suspected the watch was worth more than the $5.99 Goodwill was asking. He was right, and after taking it to a Le Coultre dealer, they announced it was a deep-sea alarm watch from 1959, one of the most desirable watches ever made by the company. Only 900 were manufactured, and after it was authenticated, Zach sold the bargain bucket watch at auction for $35,000. That gave him enough money to help pay for his wedding, buy a $4,000 Omega Speedmaster watch, and the golf cart that he'd entered Goodwill to find. Man, getting all that for $6 is a pretty great deal, and failing to find a golf cart in Goodwill is probably the best thing that ever happened to him. Weddings are a magical occasion, but the price tags can be absolutely terrifying. So in 2017, a bride-to-be from Britain went bargain hunting for her dress. Her friend suggested she check out a local charity store, and she was in luck. They just received a big donation of wedding dresses from a local boutique. She found a beautiful dress for £25 or $33, and when she went to put it on, she found the original price tag inside. The dress was worth $2,100 and it fit her like a glove. So she said yes to the dress and hopefully spent the $1,000 she saved on a seriously awesome wedding cake. Sometimes going to the thrift store isn't just about finding valuable items, it's about finding antiques that really speak to you, or even look like you. This shopper found a painting that looked like his clone, complete with a red sweater and glasses. In that situation, I wouldn't hesitate to buy it. He could easily claim he commissioned the portrait himself, and his friends would be none the wiser. Another thrifter found the perfect t-shirt. It had a picture of a guy who looked like his twin with similarly styled brown hair, a beard, and glasses. The caption, hipster. Never has a more accurate caption been written. Some jewelry is so ostentatious that it looks like it has to be fake. Like this chunky gold ring that a Redditor called Urban Relic Hunter found in a thrift store back in 2024. The ring was marked up for $20, so she initially thought it was just a showy piece of costume jewelry. But when she picked it up to have a closer look, it weighed just under an ounce and was marked with a mysterious engraving. So she decided to take it home and test it. Unbelievably, this costume jewelry was as real as it gets, and she found it was made out of 18-karat gold, diamonds, and a giant blister pearl grown inside a mollusk's shell. Their research showed that it probably came from the mid-20th century, and similar vintage rings can be found online for over $4,000. So it looks like Urban Relic Hunter lived up to their username by entering the thrift with a crumpled 20 and leaving with a small fortune on her finger. A long time ago in the galaxy that we all live in, one of my viewers spotted a Star Wars poster at a market for a mere $3.
Hello there.
Now, I've seen this poster bandied around a lot, and I've got a t-shirt with the very same print. But little did the thrifter know, this wasn't just a reproduction. They bought a truly original poster from the movie's first theatrical release in 1977. This unique item regularly sells for over $2,000 to Star Wars collectors, and it can fetch much, much more at auction. So, from a couple bucks to collector's gold, this is one small step for a shopper and one giant leap for their wallet. 360-degree Animation described their Star Wars discovery in a comment on one of my videos, but they have competition from another viewer whose thrift store find was pure gold. Years ago, the Kaiser Will worked at a thrift store, and someone donated their deceased mother's ugly old handbag. It was so heavy that she struggled to carry it inside, but the bag was completely empty. So they investigated, and behind the stitching, in the very bottom of the bag, they found gold. Literally.
Oh my God!
The hidden space held 9.3-ounce gold bars and 12 1-ounce gold sovereigns. They didn't know whether the mother hid them or whether they'd been in the bag the whole time she'd owned it, but either way, those gold bars sell for around $182 each, and gold sovereigns can sell for $1,000, depending on the age or rarity. So one thing's for sure, the handbag was pretty sizable parting gift from the woman's mom. But those commenters found a giant payday. But another one of my viewers left a comment about a thrift store find that changed the course of their life. Coffee Time 1991 explained that in 2011, they were a broke 19-year-old living in New York City when they visited a thrift store with their friend. They purchased a pair of black leather boots for under $20. But what they found inside turned out to be the real prize. They retrieved a jewelry box from one of the boots, and it contained a real gold chain. Coffee Time took this chain to the Diamond District in Midtown Manhattan to get it valued, and the jewelers bought it for $1,400 in cash. Compared to some of the six-figure finds we've seen today, that might not seem like much. But Coffee Time used the money to move to Boston for a new job, and as of 2021, they'd been in Massachusetts ever since, showing how one random find at the thrift store can completely turn your life around. From $13 Elmo suits to Naruto's jacket, you can find some insane threads at the thrift, but sometimes a piece of clothing can be much more valuable than it first appears. Leather jackets have been cool since, well, forever. But do you know what makes one even cooler? A roll of dough hidden in a secret compartment. In 2024, a Redditor scored a vintage leather bomber jacket for $4, complete with a real rabbit fur lining and possum fur on the hood. The past owner was clearly very extravagant, and when the OP tried the jacket on, they discovered a secret pocket behind the lining that was filled with banknotes.
The world's best jacket. If I had this, it would show everybody.
Altogether, they found $400 that they took home with the bomber. So their thrift store find kept them warm and lined their pockets too. But let's move from clothes back to accessories and check out a Redditor called Last Thursday, who found a jewelry box that turned out to be a treasure chest. They bought the box for $3.99 in 2023, and as they rifled through it, they found these stunning earrings hidden at the bottom. Cheap glass, plastic clasp? Not likely. When they posted the find on Reddit, the commenters believed that the earrings looked like they were made of real gold and opals, precious gemstones that can be even rarer than diamonds. Some even identified the gems as fire opals from Ethiopia that would have been imported to France between the late 19th and early 20th centuries. In recent years, Ethiopian opals have sold at auction for thousands of dollars depending on the purity. So if the commenters are correct, Last Thursday could be in for a major payday. In 2025, another Redditor found a jewelry box that contained some hidden treasure. They found 2 rings that were inscribed with 14K. And when they posted these photos on Reddit, the commenters explained that the marks meant they were made of 14-karat gold. One commenter theorized that they were probably wedding bands, and if they are made of 14-karat gold, they might fetch a couple $100 each. However, the OP also posted a photo of this dazzling diamond pendant, and although it doesn't have a carat mark, if that's real, it could be worth thousands. And why not check out all our other amazing products and bundles at the lowest price they'll ever be? But hurry, because this discount is only for a very limited time. All items are designed with love by us, and every purchase you make directly funds what we do here on this channel. So hurry, don't miss out on this saving. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description to purchase this bundle of joy while stock lasts. Okay, that settles it. Stop the video. I'm running to my local thrift store. What's the craziest item you've found at a thrift store? Let me know in the comments below. And to see even more insane discoveries, check out my video on the most amazing recent finds. Thanks for watching.